Trees.
Hello, Toastmasters. We all came here to learn, to practice, to better ourselves as speakers, and as Annette reminded us, to have fun. But what about a little bit of suffering? Would we benefit by adding some struggle to our Toastmasters experience? My answer is yes. And to support it, I'm going to talk to you about how struggle promotes learning new skills. I will give you an example. I will exercise some moxie and I will talk about neuroscience, why and how it works. And at the end, I'm going to reflect a little bit on how desirable difficulties can enrich our Toastmaster experience. And my example comes from the world of soccer, and I do realize it's not the best audience to talk about soccer, probably. Fatih is not here, and he's probably the only one who would appreciate, oh yes, of course, Oscar, thank you so much, who would appreciate soccer as much as I do. Danielle, okay, so I have support in this audience. My example is about the king of soccer, Pelé, who was one of the most famous soccer player of all times. And he's shown here on these pictures, but believe me, these photos do not give him justice, because he was a miracle. People who saw him playing on soccer field would say that as he was moving through the field with the ball at his foot, because in soccer, unlike in American football, you are not allowed to use your hand. The impression was that this ball was attached to his foot by a rubber band. So good he was. But the miracle is not about him by himself. The miracle is that the Brazilian soccer teams always have wonderful players. Actually, the team themselves act and play wonderfully. Why? There is a lot of science and research behind this miracle, but one of the explanations is in the way Brazilian soccer players train. Have you ever heard about futsal? Futsal is a little brother of a soccer. It can be played inside a building on a much smaller field, but what is most importantly is that the futsal ball is much heavier in lower bounce. Shown here are 3 snapshots from the experiment on bouncing of football or soccer and futsal balls. So they were dropped in the first picture, they were dropped from the same height, and as you can see, they reached the ground at about the same time. But when they bounce back, the soccer ball bounced back about 5 times higher. So it's much harder to play futsal than soccer. And when I first heard about this type of practice, I thought it's pretty obvious. When you're giving something very heavy, very hard to play with, and then you switch to something lighter and bouncing, you are so happy, it's so much easier for you to play, so you do better. But it turns out that the reality is a little bit more complicated than I am explaining it to you right now. What happens when a futsal player is training with this futsal ball is that he becomes very prone to mistakes. And because of this, he needs to slow down. He makes these mistakes. He needs to reflect on them and learn from them. And then slower, repeat his practice again. Scientists call it deep practice. And to explain why it's working, I do need to talk about neuroscience, even though I know nothing about it. But I read about it in a book. And what is said there is that our brain represents a net of connecting neurons. When we learn a new skill or acquire a new knowledge, these neurons fire to each other in a long and sometimes very complicated pattern. This electrical signal go from one neuron to another, and when we repeat the practice, one very interesting thing happens. A special tissue, fat-based tissue, myelin, is being formed around these fibers connecting different neurons. Just like insulation on electrical wire. This tissue does two things. First, it makes our learning more efficient. We learn quicker. Because the electrical charge is traveling faster when it uses this insulated fiber. And second, it will stay with us longer. Now, what about Toastmasters? We don't advertise ourselves as a place for struggle or pain. We say that our environment is supportive and safe, but I believe this is a safe place to fail, to make mistakes, and to learn from them. I'll give you just one example. Recall the backward meeting which was run by Monique just recently. Everyone who had a chance to speak here at the lectern, I'm sure felt awkward. Tell me I'm not right. It was awkward. It was very uncomfortable. And I'm sure we have grown a lot of myelin during that hour. So I'm going to challenge myself and invite you to challenge yourself and each other, to use this opportunity to try something new, to fail, to make mistakes, and learn, while still having fun, Mr. Tucker.